The following is an original audio series from Sierra International Machinery, Pile of Scrap, with your host, John Sacco.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition or episode of Pile of Scrap. And today, I have the famous. Well, you're kind of famous. I saw you on TikTok, so that makes you famous, right?
If I'm on TikTok, then of course, yes.
Jennifer Betts. Jennifer, welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here and talk about TikTok.
No, well, I'm off. I gave up TikTok to start here. Well, okay, so interesting. You know, I was on TikTok and LinkedIn, and I saw one of your posts. It was actually on LinkedIn, but it had a TikTok logo on it, where you were showing the inside of a steel mill.
Yes.
And knowing Repurposed, I think we had just released episode 1. I had messaged you and said, great, or not messaged you, I just made a comment. Great message. And you replied back, and then you had followed Sierra. You had met Lindsay, our head of marketing. When did you meet her?
2019, I believe.
At Israel Convention?
Yep.
Okay. So you had been following Sierra, and then so I hadn't met you. So actually today's the first time I've actually met you in person.
Very true. Yes.
Okay, so you know, it's interesting. Your background, you are what you call on your profile a metal enthusiast.
Very accurate. I have done the full scope at this point: non-ferrous, ferrous, ferroalloys, finished product. It's the full gamut, minus the precious metals.
Okay, well,
minus
all
those.
right. A lot of people are the precious metals. So you're at Indiana University, senior year.
Yep.
Trying to get a job someplace in this great world of ours, right?
That's the goal.
And you tell us about this, because this is how you get started, and it's kind of nutty.
It's completely unexpected. When I was a senior, I was a finance major. I should have gone to an investment bank. I should have done something along those lines. And honestly, I have to give a huge shout out to Amy Zach. She worked at the David J. Joseph Company. She was really into recruiting at that time period, and she honestly was probably the one that pulled me over to the booth at the career fair and started talking to me that way.
Okay, so how many job offers did you have coming out of college?
I believe I had 3, possibly 4, when I was in my senior year of college.
Okay, so you choose, I'm going to work for the David J. Joseph, and I'm going to be working in recycled metals. Yeah, not sexy, definitely not something college seniors are looking at. What the heck drove you to do that?
That was pretty much the exact response of my parents, of all the folks that I went to school with. You know, Indiana University has a top 10 business school, right? There are major corporations that go there recruit. So my friends are going off to all these publicly traded companies, and they're doing all these, big projects. They're consultants, all these things. And here I am. I'm going to go trade scrap metal at the time, right?
Well, right. Recycled iron right
Recycled
now.
iron.
Recycled
exactly.
Iron. But yeah, we called it all those years ago.
Right, yes.
How long ago was that?
Almost a couple decades at this point.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay, so here I am. Being a metal recycler that we are here at Sierra,
yes.
I've seen a lot of David J. Joseph come through. And I remember Craig Feldman, who was once president.
Yes.
I remember when Craig was just a young kid coming, traveling through Bakersfield and buying some iron from us as well. So, All right, you get started. Did you ever go at the first week, 2 weeks, going, what the hell did I decide to do? Or did you go, oh, no, this is cool?
Oh, it was a toss-up between the two, because at DJJ, there's really no training program that you could go complete out in the world, right? So what do? They send you to all of their scrap yards, and each scrap yard or, metal recycling facility, they are training at the scale. So you're sparking the different metals across the scale house. You're picking items off the shredder to make sure that it's clean material. And you're questioning, wait, I thought I have a college degree, and I thought I signed up to be a commodity trader in this sense, and yet I'm working in these metal recycling facilities to essentially get your base knowledge.
Right.
Because they hire you out of school for your openness to learn at that point. They're picking business students, economists, Usually you played some sort of sport that was a team organized activity, something along those lines, because they want to be able to take
Were
somebody.
you a college athlete?
I was.
What'd you play?
Well, and slightly intramural. Indiana has something called Little 500, and it is based loosely off of the Indy 500.
Okay.
So it's a bicycle race. And so I rode in college for 4 years.
All right, right on. So you're hired on, you're working in facilities.
Yep.
You're like, oh my God, what the hell am I doing? Mm-hmm. And then you get out of the facilities and you're off to go knock on customer. What region did you start in?
So I started off in Cincinnati, and my territory was the Midwest to almost the South. And it covered a lot of territory. At that time, DJJ was starting their metals group really kind of from scratch. And so my boss at the time essentially handed me the ISRI directory and said, here are the states that you're going to cover. Start calling on these people, see if they'll sell you anything. And I just essentially got in my company car, a pretty sweet Chevrolet Impala with spoiler.
The Chevy Impala.
Moonroof.
Do they still make that? I don't even know if they make it.
They may not make that anymore. And I cruised the country. And I got to meet some incredible people, and that's when it started clicking with me.
Well, the Midwest is the greatest. I love Indiana. I've said it. My photograph here on walls. My best friend Mike Lewis. Mike's in Warsaw, Indiana, and I just love the Midwestern vibe, the attitude, and everything. So you're driving up and down the Midwest, calling on people.
Just calling on people.
So when does it hit you? God, I really like this.
It's probably the first time when I saw the charge bucket drop the recycled iron into the furnace.
Which steel mill was that?
It was actually Rocky Mountain Steel.
Okay.
Out in Colorado.
Durango, right? No, Colorado Springs? Which
further
one?
south, Pueblo.
Pueblo, that's right, Pueblo.
In August. Now, first of all, I have to back up on that one. I started off on the non-ferrous side of the business. Okay. So I, in theory, should not have been at that steel mill. But DJJ wanted to make sure that all of their trainees at that point had a full, well-rounded experience. So when did they send me to Pueblo, Colorado to go see their steel mill for the first time? And this is before Nucor owned DJJ, by the way.
Okay, that's right.
So that's also why Nucor was not the first one that I went to. August.
Perfect.
August in southern Colorado is not exactly the best time to go to your first steel mill.
Yeah, it's pretty warm.
It's a little warm. You've toured steel mills.
And it was in mid-July when I did SSAB.
There's a little bit of heat that comes off that furnace.
The heat outside makes no difference. It isn't going to... because... kind of shifting gears here, but when everybody's asking me, well, how hot was it at SSAB inside the mill? I go, you can't describe heat that you've never felt before unless you've been in a steel mill. You don't know what that heat is.
No.
So you're in there, you see it, you see the charge into the bucket and that...
The whole flume, the flames... And then when the electrodes rolled over and then just started shocking the material.
Yeah, when it goes...
Oh, it was the coolest sight. You can't explain it. You're not going to... I mean, the video of Repurposed is fantastic. It's the best version that I've been able to see of recreating that experience. There's a moment in, I believe it's episode 3, you're walking by where the lid is open.
The flying saucer.
And it's just for like a half second, you see like move away because you can't, if you haven't ever toured a steel mill, you can't explain the heat that comes off of that.
And being the heat you weren't directly underneath the lid.
Right.
But when it opened up and it's just glowing red, I'm trying to get away because I'm like, are you kidding me?
It's indescribable. And
it's really cool.
It is really cool. I mean, you're probably going to lose 10 pounds of sweat. If you're staying out there too long. Hydration is absolutely key in those situations. It's incredible.
So that was the moment that hooked you in.
100%.
Right? So then you were telling me you get transferred to the Pacific Northwest?
I did. And depending on who you ask, at this point in my career, Nucor has now purchased DJJ. So I went from non-ferrous to ferrous, and my non-ferrous folks said that I got demoted to the ferrous side.
Ooh.
And the ferrous folks thought I got promoted.
Okay, absolutely.
Depends on who you ask. And so I went out to Seattle for about 5 years, and I purchased recycled steel for a variety of the Nucor steel facilities out west. My territory was basically from Alberta south through North America west. So I had some
You didn't get down to California, though.
very
Because were you buying for Plymouth as well?
I was.
Okay.
Yes. So occasionally I would come out here.
Okay.
But during my tenure out there, we ended up opening an office in Arizona. And so they took a lot of southern United States. But
So how many women were hired on at that time?
so when I worked at DJJ, I believe there was no more than 3 female traders at any given time. And there were probably on average 30 to 40 traders, district managers in total at the company.
Well, let's be honest. I don't think, like I said, it's funny how you ended up here, but it's not the sexiest job. It's not like, ooh, I want to go travel through metal recycling facilities and buy recycled iron or aluminum and copper. It's just not set, but it's changing.
Yes.
People are beginning to understand. But all right, well, so
Yes.
DJ out Pacific Northwest, and then you moved back to the Midwest?
Right. So my next job was at AK Steel. I was the raw materials manager for their 5 melt shops.
So you went out again buying iron.
I did. Yes.
So what's it like being the actual buyer for the actual mill versus being, in some respect, because DJJ is also acts as brokerage, right? As
Correct.
well.
Yes.
So was there much of a difference, or it was easy for you?
There wasn't a huge difference in the 2 positions. At AK Steel, I did have to get that trader mindset out of my head a little bit, because there would be some times where I had extra material on the ground and I saw opportunities to be able to sell that, but that's not their position. Once they buy it, they're going to always maintain that raw material. So that was really the only shift in terms of purchasing between those 2.
So fair to say now that you start off, you start working in yards, and then you transferred out to the Pacific Northwest, back into the Midwest with the AK Steel. Is it fair to say that this industry is now in your blood? I mean, is this just something you really love?
I'm sure my doctor would say that I have too much iron at this point in the blood work, but it absolutely is. And I'll be fully transparent. When I took this job, it was exciting about a company car and an expense report, and I'll get to travel. But I'm going to give it 6 months, and then I'll reassess after the bonus. And I don't think I made it 6 months into this business before even completely forgetting that I had set that up for myself.
So your family, and you're doing this, and they're asking how you're doing, and you're starting to tell them, hey, I love this stuff. Mm-hmm. Are they still thinking you're crazy, or are they starting to understand what it is you're doing?
Honestly, it probably wasn't until Repurposed came out that I was able to show them what I have been a part of. Because a lot of the times we talk in acronyms a lot.
Yes, we do.
Right? ISRI has some fantastic names.
Well, ISRI's an acronym, the Institute of Scrap Recycling Industries.
Exactly. I mean, it was difficult to discuss with my friends and family what I did.
Okay, so we started talking on LinkedIn, and you started sharing the Repurposed series, the docu-series that we've done at Sierra. And why? What was it about the docu-series that you said, yeah, this needs to be shared? What was it about it for you on a personal level? We did a lot of work on it. I love it personally, but you're somebody I don't know, but you tell us.
I have seen for years that our industry has not done that great of a job visually representing what we do and how important we are and how we are everywhere. Metal is local and it is global and it affects our everyday life. And yet, until recently, I didn't have any content to really be able to show people to get the next generation excited about our industry until really Repurposed came along. Because up until then, I'm Googling, and of course what I'm finding are the accidents, the things that are not great about our industry, but don't happen that often because we take safety, especially in this country, as a huge priority.
Well, I think we're, quite frankly, from an industrial standpoint of safety in the American steel industry and the American recycling industry, safety is on the forefront. And, that's why I think a lot of people liked episode 2 so much with Shannon Johnson from SSAB, because they just felt that it was so important, and the way she brought home the message of safety and along with the environment. So safety is a big part of what we do, and it looks hectic, if you will, to people from the outside. But there is a true method to the madness, and it's safety drives it.
Absolutely. I still have my steel-toed boots and my hard hat that I travel anytime I go to a yard, any facility.
Well, you showed up with your steel toes.
I did.
I don't know if that'll get on camera, but you brought them today.
They're here.
So you came up. We met. You toured our facility. What'd you think of Sierra Recycling and Demolition?
Impeccably clean. Well done. There've been a few yards in my day that I
wanted to say scrap.
I did. I'm working on it. So I've toured a few metal recycling facilities in my day, and it's always appreciated when there is no debris in the roadways, that it's paved. That's not very common, and it's well organized, and it obviously runs well.
Well, it's part of way I see the image of our industry. This is the thing about repurpose, trying to change the narrative. We're not junk yards. We're not trash people. But there seems to be, and this is where you're passionate about marketing and discussing the image and how people need to talk about our industry. So this is part of how we connected, if you will, because you were sending out the message. Why is that? What's going on out in the marketplace or the lack thereof about the education of what we do?
We're struggling as an industry to hire. Just plain and simple, it's hard to encourage people to come to our industry. And I started on this venture about a couple months ago. I read an article that talked about the different demographics for the various social media platforms. And that's honestly what started my path to start posting on TikTok. Because up until that point, I'm on LinkedIn. I thought I'd been doing a decent job on LinkedIn in terms of just connecting, networking, promoting our industry. But LinkedIn is also a bit of a silo, right? We're not going to reach that next generation. And TikTok is typically a younger target.
That is correct.
Right?
Our company posts on TikTok, and we've had some amazing... there's some of the videos that we've posted on TikTok and have multi-million views.
Yes.
Multi-millions.
If that's not a walking billboard for the justification to do something different, to expose people that are not familiar with this on an everyday basis, then I don't know what is. It's basically an example of people are interested in what we do. They've never seen it before.
Well, I think one of the common feedback I get from Repurposed is this is the common reply when I ask them, so what do you think? And these are people out of the industry, and they say, I had no idea the impact that metals recycling has on my daily life. And then those who work in the industry, my employees who I showed, we had viewings for it, they had somewhat of an idea. They didn't know completely until they watched it. And then their response is, I'm so proud to be part of this industry, because what we do for the environment, with the savings of energy and the savings of CO2 emissions, because we're the first step. We are the supply chain for all these mills, be it steel, copper, aluminum, stainless, paper mills as well. They're proud to be part of it. And we're hoping this helps attract people to our industry, because it's just not the sexiest thing out there.
It's not, and I think that's a little bit on us, because whenever I tour a yard, I find so many interesting things that are in the yard, and if I'm finding them fascinating, I'm a little biased, I have to imagine that other people will too. And it's being confirmed on TikTok and other social media platforms. I'm posting about stories, in my experience, about some of the cool stuff that I've seen during my...
What's the coolest thing you saw in a yard then?
Right. There's been so many. Honestly, I don't know what it's called. But it is I think it came from World War II. It was in a yard in Idaho. And it was this miniature Jeep, but Jeep's not the right word for it. And it was a single person, and the guy had it come in, and it was supposed to be scrapped. And he said, absolutely not. And he repurposed it. And so then he used that to drive around his yard instead of a 4x4 or something.
Well, and that's the thing. And I think last week I was at a major company's management meeting, and I asked the audience, I said, how many of you have family members in education that may be educators? a third of the room raised their hand. I said, share it. Because I think people can get behind the cause of our industry when they understand what our industry does and how it helps their daily lives. Look, we're the choir, right? But you're not going to have roads. You're not going to have highways and bridges without recycled iron.
No.
You're definitely not going to have hospitals, because the hospitals, to build it, all the infrastructure of a hospital, the steel, and it's coming from recycled iron, and then all the hospital beds, the electronics, the operating tables, and the tools that they use in operating rooms, and the medical devices. So much of it comes from recycled metal content. All the medical supplies that arrive in cardboard boxes, that most of it's coming from recycled paper. The impact of our industry on the daily lives, and I think Repurpose is changing that. You're on a personal crusade.
Yes.
You're out there and you're doing it. So how many followers do you now have on TikTok? When you started, where are you at now?
Okay, so it's not as many as Sierra has at this point. But I started off.
You're just new to this.
Oh, I'm new. I'm less than 2 months old. I started off with 0 followers. I think I'm in north of 1,400 at this point in terms of followers, up to 50,000 likes. And I've had one video I think is at to 600,000 views. Another one, I have a couple that are like 40, 50,000 views. And so I can't imagine that there's 50,000 people in our industry on TikTok. No. So it has to mean that there are a lot of people that are interested in our industry. They just didn't know about it.
So where are you taking this now? What you live out here in California. Your husband works for Amgen.
Yes.
Biotech. Is that right? Is it
biomedical?
Biomedical. Well, Amgen, great company. So you got 2 kids.
Yes.
So, but you want to be active doing something. And
yes.
So where are you taking all this? What's your plan?
I really want to help our industry get a more diverse workforce, get the next generation excited about it, because I do see down the pipeline how the recycled materials industry supports manufacturing here in the United States. And if the past 3 years hasn't taught us enough about our supply chain issues, we have to take a concerted effort, especially over the next generation or two, to make sure that we keep businesses in the United States running.
Not only do I agree with that, but see, here's the thing. Because we have a great supply chain here in this country, we also export, we have plenty of supplies. There is also, in my opinion, we want these industries here because what people don't understand about steel mills, paper mills, foundries for aluminum, copper, the reduction in CO2 emissions, 60 percentile and above for iron and energy savings. Aluminum's in the 90 percentile. Copper's up there, and paper. You can't eliminate these industries because CO2 emissions don't have a border.
No.
So you can put it in all these other countries, but those CO2 emissions are going to find their way back over here. So it's not like, oh, we eliminate, look how great we are. It's coming back here sooner or later. Look at the radiation from Fukushima. Found its way over to the United States.
Yep.
Those CO2 emissions from wherever in the world gets up there, and they're trying to save the atmosphere, right? So you might as well have the industry here that is doing its part. Yes. Would you not agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. And something that most people don't realize is, say, for instance, on the steel industry, the United States is actually one of the leaders in terms of using recycled materials, having lower carbon emissions. 70% of our steel is manufactured via a process that uses up to 100% recycled materials. And to put it in perspective, the entire steel industry for the United States is just 10% of what China produces in a given year. And China only uses 10% recycled materials for their steel in a given.
They're supposedly making change to more EAFs, but they're all, not all, but the vast majority of mills in China are integrated mills,
yes.
as in Russia,
yep.
as in India.
Yep.
I'm not saying it's a bad thing because, integrated mills have a purpose as well. They produce, a lot of the steel that is needed for a lot of different industries too. But the steel making and the technologies have advanced in EAFs so much that we can make comparatively equal steel from recycled iron than we can from virgin.
Yes.
So, part of Repurposed, the whole concept is changing the narrative. And, I had a congresswoman from Florida call me after I shared it with her, she just flat out, first words out of her mouth after hello was, I had no idea the impact your industry has on my daily life. Mm-hmm. So, this is good. So you're going to be taking this message in. So you're going to continue. Are you consulting? What are you doing with
I'm essentially at this point open to the opportunities. A lot of why I started this was at the beginning of this year, if I want to seek out a new audience from a business development standpoint, I'm going to have to do something different.
Okay.
And to do something different, I have to try something new. And trying something new was the video formatting and really casting out a wider net. And the net that it has cast in just the 2 months alone has been incredible. We're meeting because of that, right? There have been opportunities where people have seen my videos, my content, have seen my history, my experience, and essentially said, you would be perfect for this. And now all of a sudden I'm being brought opportunities that I didn't even know existed before.
I think that's fantastic. So you want to do a podcast?
Yes.
I love this idea. Tell us about your podcast that you're going to start and you're going to eventually get going. I mean, you're here on Pile of Scrap podcast, but
yes.
You've got an idea for your podcast. Tell me about it.
Yes, and this is a learning opportunity. Thank you to everyone for the tips and
for
tricks.
Drew.
Yes, for
you
Drew.
You can't have a podcast
yes.
without Drew.
Yeah, the behind the scenes. I want to do a Women in Metals podcast. There have been so many incredible women that I have met over the years, and we don't really have a platform to use our voice. And if we want to see a more diverse workforce, if we want to start seeing the next generation come into our industry, we have to start showcasing who's already here, right?
Okay.
Representation matters.
Absolutely.
Right? So I want to essentially say from raw materials, mining, recycled materials, all the way to the finished products, the vehicle that you're driving. If you touch metal, I want to hear from you, because that's how many different career tracks exist in our industry, and nobody is talking about that.
Well, there's definitely, look, you talk to anybody in our industry, the attraction of talent is very difficult right now. And I like your, ISRI, the Institute of Scrap Recycling Industries, always got to clarify it.
Yes.
They have a women in recycling forum.
Yes.
And a lot of great women in there. In fact, our Southeast Regional Sales Manager, Jessica Driggers, is part of it. Mm-hmm. I think Lindsay Morlatis, our Director of Marketing, she's going to be involved. Mm-hmm. I think, look, ultimately, it isn't just, everybody needs to know the opportunity exists in our industry. And when you call for diversity, I like to think of it as, hey, everybody's working these days. Why not come and work for an industry that actually is saving the environment? I have said, and I say it every podcast, we are the original environmentalist.
100%.
And nobody does more, no industry in the United States does more for the reduction of CO2 emissions and energy savings than the recycled materials industry.
Absolutely. I went to a Chief networking event in LA recently. And Chief, for those who don't know, it's a professional networking organization for women. And it crosses all industries, right? In the LA area, maybe not so many people in the metals industry, right? So I go there, and the first few people that I meet, I tell them I'm in the metals industry. I'm going to keep it really broad, almost blank-faced. Don't know how to follow up that conversation until I started changing the narrative of I'm in sustainability, I'm in recycling, I'm into recycled materials, those things. It was like I became the most popular person in the room. All of a sudden...
But then you go, so why aren't we handling the plastic bottle right? And you're like, that's not my area.
There were a couple plastic comments.
Sure, there always is.
For sure. But until I could sit down and tell them that their car that they're driving probably has X percentage of recycled materials in it already, it had never occurred to them.
And that's what's happening, with Repurpose, the same thing. All right, well, listen, let's bring this podcast in for landing. I want to wish you the best of luck with your podcast and your future. But final thoughts, final words from you, Jennifer, today. You're here, but you just, you got a great passion for this. So final thoughts, final words to you.
The final thoughts is don't be afraid to use your voice. There are so many unique people in our industry that see unique things every single day in their business, in their facilities, and yet we're too cautious to share that. We're not going to attract the next generation unless we start highlighting how awesome our industry is.
I'll finish it with this. We've had our head in the sand, and I think we've had our head up our ass way too much to hide our industry. Mm-hmm. But now the impact is being, the truth is being told. I think there's going to be a swell of momentum that changes the way people see our industry.
I hope so. I hope it does. And I appreciate Sierra, you, the team behind the scenes, because you've been doing this for years at this point.
We have.
Right? And we need to encourage other people in our industry to do the same.
Well, you're doing it. So I'm going to encourage you to keep doing what you're doing because, again, the more people learn about what it is we do, the more attraction we'll have to it because of the understanding and the education of our industry.
Absolutely.
Well, that's it. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time and being a guest here on Pile of Scrap, and really enjoyed it. So I'll see you in Nashville at the
Absolutely.
All
Monday
right.
through Friday.
Well, fantastic. Well, that's it for another great episode of Pile of Scrap.
This has been a Sierra International Machinery original audio series. Thanks for listening. Please share this podcast and make sure to subscribe.